With the Golden Isles plunged into darkness, there's no doubt things are about to get a bit chaotic. Luckily, the Ubisoft team has given us all the tools necessary to defend the gods and defeat Typhon. Hello friends, it's Kodiak here and welcome to Legacy Gaming. This is the Road to Launch Part 3 for Immortals Fenyx Rising. If you've played any Ubisoft games in the last 5 years, you're probably familiar with the way they handle combat in their games, but Immortals Fenyx Rising attempts to step out from behind the shadows of more established titles and carve a new path, one more accessible to players of any age. When you break it all down, that's really at the heart of combat in this game. The tools you have are simple: a sword, an axe, and a bow, and a host of godly powers, but we'll get there, I promise. And because Fenyx Rising plays more like an action game, think Darksiders, not Dark Souls. You'll even see that infamous combo meter on the side of your screen made famous by action games throughout the decades. Each weapon has its specific purpose, and it's important to understand that purpose so you can string maneuvers together. Your sword acts as a light attack, your builder if you will, which deals a small amount of damage to enemies but has the added value of restoring stamina after stringing combinations of moves together. Every action game has this type of attack, the one that connects all of your major abilities. Fenyx also has access to an axe attack, which acts, in this case, as a heavy attack. Heavy attacks hit harder and have the added effect of increasing the stun gauge of an enemy. Every enemy from the lowliest of minions to the beefiest of bosses has a secondary health bar. When that bar fills up, the enemy becomes stunned, rendering them motionless and increasing the damage they take for a period of time. Stunning enemies is a fundamental pillar of combat in Immortals Fenyx Rising. There's no better way to take down an enemy than by stunning them. Of course, axe attacks are only one piece of that puzzle, and here is where we get to the good stuff. Fenyx also has access to a variety of special god powers that not only deal a large amount of damage, but also inflict stun damage to enemies. These are the ultimate abilities in the game, and while there may not be many of them, they are certainly effective. You'll gain access to Heracles' Strength, which allows you to pick up and move heavy objects. You use this primarily to solve puzzles, but it's worth pointing out that hurling objects at your enemies is a damn good strategy. In fact, it's clear just by how much rubble is on the ground that the developers wanted this to be a focus in combat. Other abilities include things like Apollo's Arrow, which gives you direct control over the flight path of an arrow. This again will be primarily used to solve puzzles, but can also be used effectively against enemies and bosses. The remaining abilities all tie nicely into the flow of combat. Hephaestus' Hammer, Athena's Dash, Ares' Wrath, and Phosphorus' Attack all weave seamlessly into the fast-paced combat the game is designed for. We also can't forget about our wings, which gives Fenyx the ability to float and suspend in air while attacking enemies, locking them in place with a barrage of attacks. It's hard not to see the parallels between Immortals Fenyx Rising and The Legend of Zelda, but no one ever said Nintendo had exclusive rights to the genre, and it's exciting to see a new game step into that territory. Now there is something we haven't talked about yet, and that is stamina, which is monumentally important to combat in this game. Call it overly simple, but stamina dictates pretty much every action, from climbing mountains to using your god powers. When you run out of stamina, you're dead in the water, with no great way to avoid taking damage. Dodging, the primary way to avoid an attack, does require stamina, but you can also parry enemy attacks, which negates damage and applies some stun damage to those enemies. This is all stuff you should be relatively familiar with if you've played any of Ubisoft's open-world games, but there are subtle changes sprinkled throughout that, in my opinion, make the game a lot easier to just pick up and play. As the keepers to the entire Assassin's Creed series, you'd also imagine there to be a big stealth component to Immortals Fenyx Rising, and you're right, there is a system, although it's not that complicated. Crouching allows you to avoid enemy detection. I know, revolutionary, but instead of being able to outright kill enemies, you can attack them with a special stealth attack. Don't get me wrong, when you can do this, you should, 100%, as it will knock off a considerable amount of your enemy's health, but it's far from the assassinations Ubisoft is known for. It's clear that Immortals Fenyx Rising doesn't have the most in-depth combat system out there. What you see is what you get, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. One thing to keep in mind with this game is that combat is really only 50% of the challenge. Immortals Fenyx Rising taps into puzzle elements liberally, and your ability to run, jump, and even attack all come into the picture when presented those challenges. In my opinion, it's not always necessary to have an intricate combat system if it's only one aspect of the game. Of course, there are matters of repetitiveness we have to consider, but as you'll see later on, there is still plenty of progression to keep things evolving. Combat feels more arcadey, and that's by design. It keeps things fluid, fast-paced, and ensures that players of any age can grasp the concept, and I think that's something we should remember. With games like Watch Dogs Legion and Assassin's Creed Valhalla already out, there's no real reason to have more of the same, so shifting gears and giving players a different combat experience makes the most sense. I will say one thing about Ubisoft: they've always been good at making boss fights, and that's something I'll be paying close attention to. Variety, complexity, moveset, these are all the things that matter, and as the ultimate combat challenge in action games, they're more important than ever in Immortals Fenyx Rising. Whether or not combat still feels good after 20 hours of playing the game, well, that's still to be determined, but with the knowledge of how it works under our belts, we can venture forth and take on Typhon in the Golden Isles. We hope you enjoyed our third Road to Launch video for Immortals Fenyx Rising. In our next episode, we'll be covering progression and customization, a major component of the game. Legacy Gaming plans on covering Immortals Fenyx Rising top to bottom, so if you like our videos and want more great content in your feed, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. And while you're at it, consider joining us on Discord. We have over 6,000 members spread across dozens of great games, so click that link below and join today. My name is Kodiak, and from everyone here at Legacy Gaming, thanks for watching, and play on.